Hey guys, YouTuber 100 here. Alright, and now here I am with another Star Trek movie review. Here I am with a review of Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. So, yeah, out of the odd number Star Trek films, this one is probably the best one. I mean, yeah, this is probably the only Star Trek odd numbered movie that people would probably say is a pretty good movie. And, yeah, overall, it's good. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not as good as some of the other ones, but yeah, it's definitely, like, not as bad as some of the other ones either. Basically, yeah, the rest of the odd numbered Star Trek movies are definitely worse than this one. I mean, yeah, this is, like, a good movie. I mean, it does, like, continue the events from the second movie in a sense. Yeah, I mean, this, like, does continue the story arc that started with Wrath of Khan, and it would also continue in the next movie. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing about it, how it does continue the story. Yeah. And of course, in this movie, of course, there's the return of Spock after his death in the previous movie. I'm not sure if this was always the plan that was made for these films, or I don't know, just because a lot of people were, like, very sad and unhappy that Spock was dead, that they just decided to bring him back, kind of similar to, like, why they made Tommy the White Ranger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I don't know if, like, that was the reason why they brought Spock back here, so yeah, I'm not really sure if it was always planned to have Spock back, or if they just decided to do this because of the reaction that it got with him dying. But yeah, either way, yeah, the fans were happy to see Spock come back. And of course, like, this movie is under the direction of Leonard Nimoy, who plays Spock. So, yeah. And, yeah, basically, yeah, we still have the entire cast returning. There's still William Shatner, DeForest Kelley, James Doohan, George Takei, yeah, basically everyone else from the previous two movies. And, yeah, Leonard Nimoy still does appear as Spock, but he doesn't really come in until the very end of the movie. So, yeah. And, of course, we also, in this movie, have Christopher Lloyd as the Commander Klingon of this movie, Krudge. Is that how it's said? Yeah. Yeah. Then, yeah, overall, yeah, the movie, overall, it is pretty good. I mean, yeah, there are some scenes that do drag on, and some scenes do kind of get a little boring, but, I mean, overall, there is still, like, enough in this movie to really consider it a good film. I mean, yeah, it does have the enjoyment factor enough in it to still, overall, say it's good. So, yeah, I would probably give this movie 3 stars out of 4. Yeah, I mean, definitely not the greatest Star Trek movie, but yeah. It's still, overall, still like uh, still one of the good Star Trek movies. Okay, so, yeah, let me just get right into it. Alright, so the movie opens up with just kind of a recap of the ending of Wrath of Khan with Spock dying and then sent off to Genesis. Yeah, and then it just shows the casket still, like, on the surface of Genesis. And then, yeah, it just shows, like, the Enterprise returning back to Earth after, like, the battle with Khan. Yeah. And then eventually, like, Kirk starts to notice that Dr. McCoy was starting to act kind of strangely, like, thinking that he was Spock. And then he eventually ends up detained for it. And then, and eventually, like, all the Vulcans are informed, well, the Enterprise crew is informed by Admiral Morrow that the ship is, like, gonna be decommissioned, and the crew is not allowed to speak about Genesis because of, like, the political fallout over the Genesis device. And then, like, on the Grissom, science vessel, showing that Kirk's son David, and along with Lieutenant Savick, are like trying to investigate the Genesis planet, and then they discover that there's an unexpected life form on the Genesis surface. Yeah. And then yeah, they just Marcus and Savick just end up like transporting down to the planet. Yeah. Yeah, and eventually like the on the Klingon vessel, the Commander Kurd, who's played by Christopher Lloyd, they also eventually discover information about the Genesis. And then they feel that the devices may be actually useful as a weapon. And then they end up taking the cloaked ship to the Genesis planet. And they end up like destroying the Grissom and try to search the planet for any other survivors. And also, like, as that's going on, Spock's father ended up like confronting Kirk about Spock's death. And they also like learned that before Spock died, Spock actually transferred his Katra, or like the living spirit, to McCoy. Like, and that was why like McCoy like was thinking that he was Spock, and turned out that Ketra, along with Spock's body, are actually needed to lay him to rest on his homeworld of Vulcan. And without help, McCoy would actually die from him carrying the Cadra. And so then Kirk and the other Enterprise crew end up like rescuing McCoy from the detention center. And then they end up like disabling the Excelsior, and they end up stealing the Enterprise to return to the Genesis planet and to try to retrieve Spock's body. And then eventually on the Genesis planet, David and Savick eventually discover that the Genesis device had actually resurrected Spock, and Spock is like just in the form of a child, and he really did not really have the memories of what happened in the previous movie and stuff. Yeah. But David also like revealed that he actually used an unstable protomatter when he developed the Genesis device, and as a result of that, it is actually like making Spock like kind of age faster and really rapid. And it also is revealed that the Genesis planet would be destroyed within hours at the rate Spock is aging. And then eventually on the Genesis planet, the Klingons eventually capture David, Savick, and Spock. And as Kurd was trying to interrogate them, they then like get the signal on their ship that the Enterprise ended up arriving. Yep. And then Kurd then just like immediately beamed back up to the bird of prey. And then while the Enterprise was actually in orbit, they actually ended up being attacked by Kurd. And then during like the standoff with Kurd and the Enterprise, Kurd then just decided that one of their hostages is needed to be executed, and he was about to kill Savick, but then David stepped in and was defending Savick and Spock, and so then David ended up being killed by Kurg. And then eventually Kurg and the rest of the Enterprise crew like were like pretending to surrender, and then they activated the self-destruct sequence on the Enterprise, and then the Enterprise then ended up self-destructing, and it ended up killing the Klingon boarding party. And then yeah, the Enterprise crew then just ended up transporting to the surface of Genesis. And then eventually, while they were on the surface, Kirk then just lured Courage to the Genesis planet and promising the Genesis secret. And then once Courage came down to the surface of the planet, he then just beamed the rest of the Enterprise crew to the Klingon vessel. And then it just eventually turned into like a physical altercation between Kirk and Courage, and then eventually Kirk, as the Genesis planet was disintegrating, Kirk then eventually just kicked Courage into like a lava flowing on Genesis. And then yeah, Spock was unconscious during that, and then yeah, Kirk then ended up taking Spock, and then they boarded the Klingon ship, and then yeah, Kirk and the Enterprise crew took control of the ship, and then they headed to the Vulcan planet, yeah. And then once they arrived on the Vulcan planet, they then performed a ceremony to resurrect Spock, and then like return the Catara from McCoy back over to Spock. Again, it turned out like the ceremony was a fall torpan, which was actually a pretty dangerous and risky procedure, but they ended up succeeding with the ceremony. And then yeah, Spock then was resurrected, and then Spock woke up, and then yeah, he was just back alive and well. And at first Spock was like left with amnesia, and he really didn't remember the crew at first. But then once he saw Kirk, he then started to regain his memories about what he did at the end of the second movie, and then he remembered that Spock, well, yeah, Spock remembered that Kirk was named Jim. And then after that, then it just, like, Spock then recognized the rest of the crew. And then, yeah, the movie just ended with the text, and the adventure continues, and yeah, that's how the movie ended. So, yeah, 3 stars out of 4. I mean, yeah, overall, like, not the greatest Star Trek movie in the world, but yeah, overall, still a good movie. Yeah. And yeah, just like I said, I mean, a lot of people really were happy to see Spock come back, and so yeah, I guess that is like one of the most memorable things of the Star Trek movies with Spock's return here. And so yeah, and overall, a pretty entertaining film. I mean, yeah, like I said before, it does kind of like drag at some points, and some scenes can get boring. But yes, there was still like definitely plenty of good in this movie, and yeah, good definitely does outdo like the boring and the kind of dragging scenes in the movie. So yeah, overall, not a great movie, but a good movie. All right, so 3 stars out of 4. Like I said, all right, and does it for my review of Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.